Good morning. Today we are going to explain what quantitative qualitative translation and paragraph argument short answer for the AP Physics exams mean.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Flippin' physics.
Sure.
Bo, could you please read the part I have highlighted on page 216 of the 2019 AP Physics 1 course exam and description?
On the actual AP exam, there will be one experimental design question, one quantitative qualitative translation question, one paragraph argument short answer question, and two additional short answer questions.
Right, so in summary, every AP Physics 1 exam will have 5 questions in these categories. One quantitative qualitative translation, or QQT, worth 12 points. One paragraph argument short answer, or PASA, worth 7 points. One experimental design question, or EDQ, worth 12 points, and 2 short answer questions, or SA, worth 7 points each.
Hold up. I thought we were only going to have 2 questions this year.
Right. Because of the coronavirus pandemic in 2020, we are only having one quantitative qualitative translation and one paragraph argument short answer question. Right, Mr. P?
That is correct. 2020 is a bit different. So yeah, one quantitative qualitative translation question and one paragraph argument short answer question in 2020. Which is why we are defining those this year, and we will define experimental design questions next year. Please realize that in the description of this video is a list of links to my solutions to the free response questions from publicly released past AP Physics 1 exams and the category for each of those free response questions. Okay, Bobby, please read the definitions of quantitative and qualitative I gave you.
Quantitative means relating to, measuring, or measured by the quantity of something rather than its quality. And qualitative means relating to, measuring, or measured by the quality of something rather than its quantity.
That means reasoning something quantitatively will involve algebraic manipulation of variables. However, reasoning something qualitatively will involve writing out words in paragraph form. Right, Mr. P?
That is correct, Billy. And Billy, could you please read the part on page 43 of the 2019 course and exam description which I highlighted?
Yes. The AP Physics 1 exam requires students to be able to re-express key elements of natural phenomena across multiple representations in the domain. This skill appears in the Qualitative Quantitative Translation, QQT, a long free response question that requires students to go between words and mathematics in describing and analyzing a situation. A QQT question might ask students to work with multiple representations or to evaluate another student's words or representations. Representations include mathematical equations, narrative descriptions, graphs, diagrams, and data tables. Students who have primarily been exposed to numerical problem solving often struggle with a QQT question because it requires students to have a more conceptual understanding of both content and representations. Opportunities to translate between different representations, including equations, diagrams, graphs, and written descriptions, will help students prepare for the QQT question.
In other words, you will need to be able to go back and forth between quantitative reasoning, or equations, and qualitative reasoning, or words. A good quantitative qualitative translation example is free response question number 3 from the 2017 AP Physics 1 exam. In part A, you are asked to determine where a disk should strike a rod to maximize the final angular velocity of the rod. You are asked to briefly explain your reasoning without manipulating equations. Bobby, are they asking for a quantitative or a qualitative explanation here?
Well, they ask for your reasoning without manipulating equations, so that must be a qualitative explanation, right?
Correct, Bobby. This is a qualitative explanation because this explanation requires that you write out words to explain the physics behind your reasoning. In parts B and C, you are given student equations which might describe the angular speed of the rod after the collision. You are then asked to take these quantitative student answers, these equations, and translate them to qualitatively reason if the equations make logical sense. Again, you are asked to briefly explain your reasoning without deriving an equation.
Right. they give you the quantitative answer and ask you to translate that qualitatively. So quantitative, qualitative translation.
Exactly. In part D, the described event changes slightly, and you are asked to do your own quantitative analysis and derive an equation for the final angular velocity of the rod. So for this part of the problem, you are doing the quantitative analysis instead of them just providing you with an equation. And then in part E, the described event is changed even further, and you are asked to qualitatively determine how the final angular velocity of the rod changes. Again, there is a quantitative explanation or equation which you have to qualitatively explain using words. Hopefully you can see how this problem requires that you translate back and forth between the quantitative and the qualitative. Now, quantitative does not have to include equations. You could be given data collected by students, and that data is presented in a data table or a graph. You also could be given student qualitative arguments about physics phenomena and be expected to qualitatively explain what is correct or incorrect about the student's qualitative argument. In other words, you have to be ready to look at data and arguments and be able to respond both quantitatively and qualitatively about the physics. For more examples, I would definitely check the links in the description.
Yes.
Got it.
Will do.
Now let's look at paragraph argument short answer. Bobby, please read the part I highlighted on page 61 of the 2019 AP Physics 1 course and exam description.
Students will be asked to give a paragraph-length response to demonstrate their ability to communicate their understanding of a physical situation in a reasoned expository analysis. For full credit, the response should be a coherent, organized, and sequential description of the analysis of a situation that draws from evidence, cites physical principles, and clearly presents the student's thinking. Full credit may not be earned if the response contains any of the following: principles not presented in a logical order, lengthy digressions within an argument, or a lack of linking prose between equations or diagrams. What does expository mean?
Intended to explain or describe something.
Thanks.
What this means is that a paragraph argument short answer is not an equation derivation. It is a paragraph of sentences where you explain the physics. You are certainly going to use equations because equations are what the physics principles are based on. However, you need to not just write out equations. Instead, you need to write out a paragraph and use those equations to argue that your reasoning is correct. Be careful to present your argument in a logical order, and while you may include a few equations or diagrams, you need to make sure your answer is mostly words creating sentences, which creates a paragraph. So, paragraph argument short answer, mostly equations or mostly words?
Mostly words.
Correct. A good paragraph argument short answer example is free response question number 4 from the 2015 AP Physics 1 exam. In part A, the motion of two identical spheres is described. One is in projectile motion and one is in free fall only. After a full description of the motion, you are asked to draw free body diagrams of the force or forces acting on the spheres. No explanation is asked for. In part B, you are asked to draw a graph of the horizontal components of the velocities of each of the spheres as a function of time. Still no explanation is asked for. Notice that this paragraph argument short answer question has yet to ask for any explanation. Please do not waste time writing out explanations when you are not asked to do so.
Do not waste time writing out explanations when you are not asked to.
Right.
No, right? Get it?
Right.
No, right?
Okay.
Sure.
Bo, please read part C of this problem.
Part C. In a clear, coherent paragraph-length response, explain
Please stop. Every one of the paragraph argument short answer questions on the AP Physics 1 exams so far has had that statement on it. In a clear, coherent paragraph length response. So please, notice it and know what it means. This is your paragraph argument short answer question. So please answer with mostly words in paragraph form. Bo, please read all of Part C.
Part C. In a clear, coherent paragraph length response, explain why the spheres reach the ground at the same time, even though they travel different distances. Include references to your answers to parts A and B.
Billy, please read my answer to Part C.
As shown in Part A, the only force acting on each sphere is the force of gravity. Therefore, each sphere will have an acceleration in the y direction which will equal negative g. There is no force in the x direction on either sphere, so, as shown in Part B, both spheres will have zero acceleration in the x direction, and any motion in the x direction will not affect how long it takes the spheres to reach the ground. The initial velocity in the y direction for both spheres is 0. The displacement in the y direction for both spheres is negative h. Therefore, we can use the uniformly accelerated motion equation displacement in the y direction equals velocity initial in the y direction times change in time plus 1/2 acceleration in the y direction times change in time squared to show that both spheres will reach the ground at the same time. We have shown that, other than the change in time, all of the variables in this equation are the same for both spheres, therefore the remaining variable, change in time, must be the same.
Notice, I did refer to my answers in Parts A and B, and while I did refer to variables and an equation, I did not derive anything. Instead, I used words to form sentences to form a coherent paragraph argument which answers the question. I have been stressing that you need to let go of your numbers dependency. Hopefully you can see that because you will have to do quantitative qualitative translation and paragraph argument short answer, you really do need to stop plugging in numbers so much and instead look at the equations and understand what they physically mean. When you are able to do that, you will be able to answer these questions more easily. Thank you very much for learning with me today. I enjoyed learning with you.